Now, if you need more help with Excel than what we cover in our training videos, you want to learn more about another feature, you can come up here on top of the ribbon to the Tell Me What You Want to Do feature, which is new to Excel 2016, as opposed to the little question mark in earlier versions that you can click on to get help. So go ahead and click in here, and you get a little pop-up that says, hey, this is what you recently did and some things you may want to try. If it's not there, then go ahead and type in a keyword, like let's say I want to learn about the comment feature, how to insert a comment into a cell here, and does it actually replace the data within the cell. So let's go ahead and type in the keyword comment, and you get 3 different options. Now I know there's more, but I'm talking about the category of the options. Like everything up above this line here are all commands. So you can actually insert a comment, show all comments just by clicking on it if there are any comments that are inserted in the workbook. Show ink annotations, find and select, clear. You can get help on it or do a smart lookup. Now if you do the smart lookup, it opens up the task pane over to the right. And when you first do it, Excel is going to ask you, hey, in order to do this, to search our database online, we've got some privacy things that you may want to consider. So you can click on the privacy policy link. And if you accept it, then go ahead and click on the button Got It. And then it'll go ahead and do a lookup. And in the Insights task pane, you can explore it and actually define it. Now explore it down below. It doesn't say anything about comments in Excel, about the feature of it. It just tells you that it's a noun. So if you're actually trying to define it, which also it has the define option, because when you click on that, it's the same thing as when you click on explore. Exploring is trying to explore all different options throughout the web as opposed to specifically defining it. And so, well, you get the definition here, the noun, a verbal or written remark expressing an opinion or reaction. And you can go down and do more explore, like on Wikipedia. Do a web search on comment definitions. Sometimes they'll have images depending upon what you type in, if the search engine can find something that it finds helpful. And then, like I said, you can define it if you want the definition of it, but it doesn't say anything about the comment feature. So if you want to actually look up a word and see what it means, define it, or explore what that is on the web, you got the Insights task pane. Let's go ahead and close out. Come back up here, and let's type in comment again. Besides the commands, next we have Get Help on it. That's what I need. Click on Get Help, opens up the Help window, and down below Add a Comment. And you can go ahead and click on it, and it tells you about adding notes to individual cells by using comments to give your reader additional context for the data that it contains. So it looks like it just adds a little pop-up sticky note over to the right-hand side that people can read more about the contents or the purpose of the cell, which is cells are up. That's great. 42 is greater than 14, 21, so cells are up. And then you can come up here if you want to do a search, type in about keyboard shortcuts, and it actually pulls it up, so you can just go ahead and click on it. And then keyboard shortcuts in Excel 2016 for Windows. And then you can go back to your original search, add a comment, you can go home. So that way you can get the top categories that people look at. And that's pretty much it for the help. Close out. And then like I said, the other option under the 3 categories that are listed when you type in what you want to search for are the actual commands. So like inserting a comment, when I click on it, it actually inserts the comment as you just saw in that window. The help window explaining what it does. And so there's the pop-up. You type in cells are up, or there's no cells this quarter because we added it to an empty cell. In any case, you can learn more about comments, but the purpose again of it is to use the Tell Me What You Want feature to either execute the command, define it, to get more help in Excel on what that feature does and how to execute it, and also if you just want a generic definition of what you typed in here to do a lookup, there you go. Oh, and there's one other place that you can go besides Tell Me What You Want to Do when you want to do a smart lookup to get the definition, well, the Insights task pane. Let me go ahead and hit escape a couple of times. So, well, let me click off. The comment's still there, so I can right click on the cell, and in the shortcut, delete the comment. Don't worry, we'll cover this later. And if you come up here and click on the Review tab, in the Insights group, there's a Smart Lookup, so you don't have to come up in here and click in it to type it in. If you want to just click on Smart Lookup, it looks in the cell, and if there's anything in there, it'll do a search on it. But it says, looks like you didn't select any text, so if I select California, do a Smart Lookup, it looks it up, and hey, isn't that fun? I can explore California. May have nothing to do with my spreadsheet at the moment, except that that's where we had sales. And then also you can actually define it and see what the definition. It's a state in the western U.S. Okay, I'm good. What you're looking at here is a small database of camping gear sales in the U.S. and I want to keep track of it by the first 4 months of 2016. So I've got their column labels January through April, but I also want to keep track of it by employee or the employee's ID. So I've got their row labels, and you can see that I got a cross-tab thing going on here. So at this intersection, I've got the column label January, but the label for that row is this employee ID. So that's his sales for the month of January. Then when I advance in the same column down to the next row, it's the next employee for the same month. Now let's go ahead and go down next to this label. I just typed it in. So you can tell that we want to get the month total for January, and then we'll do it for February and so on. So to create a basic formula to add up all the cells within the month of January, go ahead and hit the equals key on the keyboard to let Excel know that we're going to enter in a formula. Then go ahead and type in the cell reference that we want to add up with the next one and the next one and so on. So this first cell that we want to add into the formula is going to be in column C, row 7. So the name of the cell or the cell reference is C7. And notice that when I type it in, it actually selects the cell so I can look at it graphically and go, okay, that's what I wanted to add. And then to add the next cell, go ahead and hit the plus key on the keyboard, and the next one in the same column, which is still column C, is going to be the next row 8, so C8. And also, not only does it highlight it, but it does it in a different color so you can compare and contrast between exactly which part of the formula refers to what cell. And then let's go to the next one, plus, and then let's do C10. And you're like, oh, wait a second, I missed it. Well, let's just go ahead and accept the formula by hitting the Enter key on the keyboard and say when you made a mistake, if you need to make changes to it, you can do it one of a couple of ways. Go ahead and select the cell and notice that it just shows us the value or the result of the formula, not the actual formula. To see the formula, you can look up here in the formula bar, and you can make your changes up here. So click after C8 and then do plus C9 and hit Enter. And notice before I hit Enter, I was typing all in lowercase. That will save you some time. Don't use the Shift key because it'll automatically convert the letters of the columns into uppercase. So when I hit Enter and I go back to select it, it converted the lowercase c to uppercase, so save yourself some time. Now you can edit it up here and do it that way, and when I click in there, it goes into edit mode, or to get out of edit mode, hit the escape key on the keyboard, and then you don't have to mess with it. But you can go ahead and double click on the cell really fast, and it puts you into edit mode within the cell as opposed to the formula bar. So if I come in here and I start messing around and typing in a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, oops, I made a mistake, and you don't want to accept it, to get out of it and not to accept your changes, hit the escape key on the keyboard, and it leaves it untouched. As you can see up here in the formula bar, it's the same formula. Now when I double click and I make changes, and I'm done, and I hit Enter, it accepts it and it moves it down to the next cell, right? Or when you double click in it, if you want to accept it but stay in the same cell without moving, then you can come up here on the formula bar and click on Enter. Of course, you get the X, which means to cancel, which is also hitting the escape key. So click on Enter, and it doesn't move it out of there, so you can stay in the same cell and look up here and not have to go back and reselect the same cell to check your formula by looking up into the formula bar. Now, is this the actual correct sum for the entire range here? You can get out a calculator, I suppose, or you can do a check in Excel by clicking and dragging and selecting the range. Now remember, to select a range, you got to have the white cross. So you can see the white cross, which is going to be there, basically, until after you select the range, and you're like, oops, I didn't mean to select that range, and you hurry and go over to the edge of the selection. You don't get the white cross, you get a four-way arrow. We already talked about that a little bit. We'll talk about that more later. Or you go to the bottom right-hand corner and you get a black cross. We'll talk about that later. So you got three things you're concerned about that you don't want to see, at least two of them right now when you're selecting a range. Not the black cross, the four-way arrow, but just the white cross. So click and drag to select it, and then notice down below on the status bar, it gives you some stats of what you have selected on your spreadsheet. You get the average of the range of cells, so the average cells for that range is 21,000, and then the total count of the cells you have selected is 4, and hey, the sum or the total there, 867, 867, it checks out. Now remember, as we talked about in an earlier training video, you can customize the status bar by right-clicking on it and saying that you don't want to see the sum, and click off, you can see the sum's gone. So let's right-click on it and add the sum. You can add others like minimum and maximum. We'll learn those in a later training video. Let me go ahead and click off. And so that's one way, or the basic way, to, in this case, add up a range of cells. Now, a shortcut to that, at least I think it's a shortcut, let's go to the next month for February and add up the same range by hitting the equals key on the keyboard and selecting the first cell, hitting the plus key, second cell, plus, third, plus, fourth, then hit enter. I mean, clicking and hitting the plus key is a lot faster than typing it in, at least I think so. And we get the total for the month of February. And then another shortcut on top of that is that if you already have the function entered in, as we do for the first column, you can actually copy that function or formula and paste it. Now when you copy and paste it, are you copying the value or the actual formula? Good question, but I kind of gave it away. When you go ahead and select it and you want to copy it, you can do the shortcut keys on the keyboard, Control-C, or just come up here on the Home tab to the Clipboard group and click on the Copy button. When you click on it, notice that the cell you have selected starts moving and coming alive. It look like marching ants, where they're just marching around saying, hey, this cell is hot, it's active, this is the one that you want to copy from, so go ahead and select a destination. In fact, you can see down below in the status bar, select, whoops, let me get out of the way, select destination and press enter or choose paste. So now that we've got the cell that we want to copy, go ahead and choose the cell that we want to paste it in. And to paste it, you can either do Control-V as in Victor to paste, or come up here on the Home tab to the Clipboard group and click Paste. And when you do that, you get a little smart tag that you can click on, and you get different paste options. The default paste is right there, and the default paste is going to actually paste the formula, not the value. Because if it pastes the value of 867, then you'd see 867, but you don't see that, do you? In fact, in the cell, if you look up in the formula bar, what formula do you get? Do you get column C? C7, C8? No, you get column E, E7, E8, and so on. So hey, that's really cool. How did it know how to do that? Let me go ahead and click off, and to get rid of the marching ants, hit the escape key on the keyboard so it can stop that, unless of course you want to keep pasting that same cell to other cells, which we could have done for April, but I've got one more trick up my sleeve that I want to show you. But the reason why it knows that is because it's dynamic. It's relative. It's not an absolute that when I copy this cell, it has to always stay in that range. And we'll talk about absolute references in another training video. So it takes it and it says, fine, you paste the formula over here. I'm automatically going to update because I see a pattern that you've got the same range of cells. In other words, I don't have a number up here for March and a number down here for March and a number over here for March. I mean, there's just no structure to it or organization, so it would try to go all over the place. So it's important to create your database as concisely as you can and tight and organized, because if it looks organized to you, most likely Excel is going to be able to help you out as it did with our copy and paste. And I'll talk about the errors of creating a database in a later training video to look out for, so Excel can help you figure it out and not have to do the extra work that would be unnecessary when it comes to working with the data and using certain features in Excel. So we did the simple formula where we typed it in, and then we used the mouse to go ahead and select the cells, and then we went ahead and copy and pasted it. Then the last thing I want to show you is that you can go ahead and use what's called the autofill handle. So if you have a cell adjacent you want to copy and paste that formula over to the right hand side, as in this example, then in the lower right hand corner of the cell that you have selected, hover over it until it turns from a white cross to a black cross. That's what's known as the autofill handle, and one of its functions, or the main function of it, is that when you click on the black cross and drag, it actually will copy the contents of that cell, not the values, but in this case the function, and paste it over to the next adjacent cell. It's like a copy and paste. You just click and drag and there you go. And did it update correctly? With the cell selected, look up here in the formula bar, and it's not E7, E8, which is this column. It updated to F7, F8. Very cool. And you can see with the Smart tag, when you click on it, the fill options, where it copies the cells, or you can copy the cell and fill only the formatting, or fill it without the formatting. So in other words, if you had a blue fill, bold numbers, underline, italics, and you clicked and dragged it over, you can say, don't copy the contents, I just like the formatting. So if I had it here, and I made the color red, and I took the autofill handle and I click and dragged it over here, it copied everything over. But what if I want to click on the drop-down autofill handle and just say fill without formatting, so it doesn't bring over the formatting of the adjacent cell? Anyways, I digress because this autofill handle we'll cover in depth in a later training video. But there's the 4 options when it comes to helping you by starting with the basic formula and some of the shortcuts once you've created your first basic formula. Now let's go ahead and continue with basic formulas, this time with the twist. We'll do it for the average and get the average for each month. So next to label month average, let's hit the equals key on the keyboard And we can do it one of a few ways. Like if you want to take the month total and get the average for the 4 employees, then go ahead and select the cell, or you can type it in, C12, and then we want to divide that by the total number who contributed to that total, and the total number are 4 employees. So to divide it by 4, you want to use the /, and on the keyboard that's the one that's left of the Shift key. It's the one that has the question mark on it. Just don't hold down the Shift key, otherwise you get the question mark. So that's your /, and then type in 4, hit enter, and there you go, you got the average. You want to confirm it? Go ahead and select it and come down below on the status bar, and we got 21, 21. Hey, it works out. You can do it that way, or let's go to the next cell and do the average this way and type in equals, and let's go ahead and click on the first cell, and let's say we don't have the total for the entire month of February, so we have to add them all up first. So equals D7, then plus the next cell, plus the next cell, plus the next cell, and then we want to, what, divide it by 4. So we do the /, type in 4. Wait a second, there's something wrong with this formula. Because what it's going to do is it's going to add up the first 3, then the last one, it'll add it up after it divides it. If you remember your algebra days, when you start putting in functions and formulas, it does multiplication and division first before it does the addition. So we want to do what's called order of operation, where we tell it what we want it to do first, and then what we want it to do second, and so on. So what we want it to do first is to add everything up. Then once it's all added with the total, as you see here, but down in this formula, then we want to divide it by 4. So the order of operation we'll do is by the parentheses, by adding 1 at the beginning and then 1 at the end before it divides it by 4. So the first order of operation is what's in the parentheses first. Then after it's done adding, then it goes outside of it and it says, oh, there's something that has to be divided by 4. So hit the enter key on the keyboard, and does it work? Let's go ahead and check. Click and drag. Do we get 124? Hey, there it is, 124. It works. And then of course, if you want to not type it all in again, you've got adjacent columns that you want to enter in the same formula, then go ahead and hover over the lower right hand corner, get the black cross or the autofill handle, click and drag, and it copies over the formula, not the value or the result of the previous formula. Let's see if it does that. Select the cell, and up here does it say D7, D8? No, it's the next column, E, so that worked. Or like I said in the previous training video, you can copy and paste as well. Copy the formula and paste it. And Excel can figure that out because we got a clean database. When we go from one cell to the next, it sees it as relative, so it automatically updates from one column to the next. In fact, let's just go ahead and do Control-C, select the cell, Control-V as in Victor to paste it. Hit the escape key to get rid of the marching ants. With the cell selected, you can see it updated to the next column, the F's and not the E's. Now, in order to perform a calculation, you don't have to have pre-filled cells with numbers. You can actually just do it from scratch in one cell. For example, if I select an empty cell and I'm like, okay, what's 199 minus 1? Type in equals 199 minus 1, hit enter, and there you go. I didn't have to select any other cells, I just did it all in one cell. With the cell selected, you can see the formula up in the formula bar, or you can double click to edit within the cell and then hit enter. Also equals 25. Now for multiplying, hit the asterisk key on the keyboard. Let's do 4, hit enter, it's 100. Oh, and then one last thing that I want to show you now that we have data to work with. We've got a database that if I want to zip from one side to the other, I know it's small, but you can imagine if I had all the way over to column AA and I want to quickly get over there, I don't want to click and drag the scroll bar and scroll, but instead, go ahead and click anywhere within the database. If you want to get to the furthest column on the right, then with the selection of that cell, hover over the border until you can see a 4-way arrow. Double click really fast and it goes to the furthest column in the database. And you can double click on the bottom, takes you to the bottom of it, double click on the left, and of course the top takes you to the top. As you recall in the previous training video, we learned how to create a basic formula to add up a range of cells or even averaging the range of cells. Here I want to do something that's a bit more complex but a lot quicker when it comes to summing up a range or averaging a range by using what are called functions, the sum function and the average function. But before I do that, when you look at a range of cells and you want to find out which cells contain functions or formulas, for my spreadsheet I could use common sense and go, okay, the number that I have down below here should contain a function or formula that gives me the results. The only way to really find out that if it is a result of some function or formula is to select it and look up here in the formula bar and go, oh, okay, there's the formula or function. But when you click off and you need to take a look to see if all the cells contain the functions and formulas that are adding it up and somebody just didn't type in a number, one way that might be quicker than selecting every cell is to come up here and click on the Formulas tab on the ribbon, go to the Formula Auditing group, and it's that command right there. When I hover over it, you can see in the pop-up it says Show Formulas, and then there's the shortcut key Control Apostrophe, and it says it'll display the formula in each cell instead of the resulting value. Go ahead and click on it, and it pushes open and displays all the cells that contain the functions or formulas. Why would you want to do that? Well, again, if you want to be able to spot those cells and make sure that they have the function or formula in it and be able to do a quick review of the formula without selecting each one to make sure it's consistent. Like this should be for the column C, so there's C's, and that for column D and E, and that makes sense. You can also select it, and it looks like it's in edit mode because it highlights the cells that this formula is dependent upon. So that's pretty cool to be able to spot quickly without having to double click to get inside of it to see the colors. And then also know that what you see here when you print will actually come out on the printer. So if you don't want to see the formulas when you print the worksheet off, then you need to go back to hiding them. So to hide them, just come back up here and deselect it, or use the shortcut keys Control Apostrophe, and they're gone. Now let's go ahead and add up a range here for this employee, the total sales that they made from January through April. And instead of using a simple formula, we're going to use functions. And one way that you can enter in a function is by simply typing it in. Equals, and of course you'll need to know the name of the function, so when we want to add up a range of cells, the name for that function is sum, so just like it sounds, S. And the moment I type in the first letter, it lists all the functions, and you'll notice that to the left of each name, you got the FX, F, that's a symbol for function. Just think of F for function. And then I'm looking for sum, so I can either scroll down or use the up or down arrow keys to toggle around, or just keep typing it until you get the process of elimination by typing in more until I finally get to the word sum, and there it is, sum. And you can see to the right, you get the pop-up that gives you a synopsis that says it's going to add up all the numbers in a range of cells. Cool. To go ahead and select the function, you can do it one of a couple of ways. You can either double-click on it, and it pops open the syntax for you to go ahead and enter in, well, it says number 1, but in our case, it's going to be the first range, and it can be the only range. Or if you have additional ranges that you want to add up, you can go ahead and type in comma and select another range. You can do it that way, or let me hit the escape key. You can type in equals SUM, and with it highlighted, just hit the tab key and it pops open the syntax as well. So the range that we want to select with the cursor flashing here is to go ahead and select the range for the first employee, their ID, and it's going to be C7 through F7. And notice over here in the function, you have the first cell, which is C7, and the last cell. The colon means through. So C7 through F7, everything in between those two cells, including those cells. Then all you have to do is go ahead and hit enter, and there you go. Does it check out? Well, let's go ahead and click and drag to select the range of cells and go down and see if we get the total sum, 705, 705. It checks out. Now, if you made a mistake and you want to go ahead and edit it, just double click in it, as we talked about in the previous training video, except I want to add something more. You can also move the entire range by hovering over one of the borders until you can see a four-way arrow that when you click on the border, that means you can drag it in any four directions. So if you want to move it around, say, okay, that's my range. Okay, that doesn't make sense, but nonetheless, you can move it around if you want to include a different range. Or you can actually hover over one of the corner boxes called resizing handles. It's called that because when you click and drag, it'll resize the selected range. And so when you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions, you're hovering over the resizing handle. You can then click and drag and go up, in, out, down, and broaden your selection or reduce it. And if you don't want to accept the changes that you made, like I don't, hit the escape key and it goes back to the default when I double click what I originally had selected. And then hit the escape key to get back out of that edit mode. Now notice that when I have the cell selected, it's got a little, let me click off of it, it's got a little green triangle in the upper left-hand corner. And then when I select it, it gives me that little exclamation point, that tag. When you hover over it, it's giving you a warning, that green icon, to let you know something's going on. So when you select it, then it gives you a little tag that you can hover that gives you more information, a synopsis of what the issue is. And it says the formula in the cell refers to a range that has additional numbers adjacent to it. So the range it's referring to is this range, and it's saying it's got additional numbers around the range. Well, it's got one to the left, and it's saying basically we didn't include it. So it's questioning our judgment and saying, I'm not sure you included everything that you should have. Well, guess what? I did. So what you can do is go ahead and click back in the cell to get the tag, then click on the tag, and you can see it's highlighted there, even a shorter synopsis. Formula omits adjacent cells. And you can say, you know what? I want to ignore you because that's not true. I got what I want. Oh, rats. How do I go back to ignoring those errors? Well, come up here and click on the File tab, go backstage down to Options, and then select the Formula tab and come down here, and there it is, Error Checking. And you can see by default it's going to enable background error checking, and the color that indicate that there are errors is green. You can change it and choose another color. And then finally, if you want to go back to those errors that you ignored, then go ahead and click on Reset Ignored Errors. Click on it. And before I click OK, while we're here, let me come up here and show you about the calculation options. By default, yours should be done automatically. In other words, let me click and drag the title bar so I can move the window out of here. That when you have a bunch of cells that this formula is dependent upon, when you change this and you type in like 1, they only made $1 for January, it should recalculate this automatically and reduce it to a smaller number. That's the default. But if you choose manual and you check the box Recalculate Workbook before saving, that means that when you make a bunch of changes in all these cells that these formulas are dependent upon, it won't automatically update until you actually click Save. So that way, you can get the numbers that you want in place and still keep focus of what the value used to be without it actually updating until you click Save. In any case, that's up to you. Let me go change this back to automatic as I want it to be. And we clicked on Reset Ignored Errors. So when I click OK, I should get the green triangle back. So when I select it, it gives me the pop-up, and then I can go ahead and ignore it again. And then finally, instead of just actually selecting a range, you can just simply type it in like equals SUM, and instead of hitting the Tab key to accept the function, just if you know how to type it, just do open parentheses and then type in your range, and that would be C8 colon means through, and then to the last column, which would be F, but the same row, 8, and there you go, just hit enter. Now why would you want to type it in as opposed to typing in the first part and then clicking and dragging to select the range? Well, it makes sense to click and drag to select the range because it's so small, but you can imagine if you had a range either going over to the right horizontally or down vertically, if it goes down to like, let's say row 50, when you click and drag, Excel gets a little excited and it may overshoot it to like row 100. That gets a little annoying, so if you know your range, it might be easier to type it in than clicking and dragging. And then just go ahead and hit enter. Fabulous. Well, we get our error. We can go ahead and click in the cell, click on the drop-down arrow, and ignore it for this one as well. Another way to insert a function besides, let's select the next cell, typing in equals SUM, and you see the symbol FX. Well, that symbol is also up here on the formula bar FX, meaning that you can go ahead and click on it to open up the insert function window. Let me hit the escape key a couple of times to get out of the cell and come up here and click on it to show you the insert function window. Now, why would you want to do it this way as opposed to typing it in? Well, it gives you a bit more detail than just what you see when you type it in. For example, let's go ahead and look up a function first, and there's quite a few ways to do it. You can either go ahead and type it in the box up above and click Go, or you can click on the drop-down arrow besides the most recently used, which, well, sum was the most recently used, so it's there, so I could just go ahead and select it, and you can see down below the syntax of it, and then the synopsis of it adds up all numbers in a range of cells. And if you need help on this function, go ahead and click on the hyperlink, but we'll go ahead and continue here, that if it's not the most recently used, you can click on the drop-down arrow and see if it's in one of the categories, like maybe math and trig, and they're sorted alphabetically. If it's not there, probably the best thing to do is click on the drop-down arrow and choose all, outside of actually typing in the name of the function if you can remember how to spell it. In any case, you can go ahead and click and drag, and it's sorted alphabetically down to the S's. And there it is. And then go ahead and click OK. Or, like I said, if you don't want to click and drag to search it, then you can delete it here and type in SUM and say Go, and it found it, or it recommended it down below. With it selected, click Okie dokie, and there we go. We got our function arguments window, and in the first number, in this case our range, it's already got something in there. Let me click and drag the title bar down so we can see what we're looking at. And it's got the column H. Well, why has it got column H? It's because it's got numbers adjacent to it, so Excel's trying to define a pattern to help you out to say, okay, I assume You want the numbers that are closest to the cell that contains the function. No. So that's okay. Let's just go ahead and type it in the first field here, the number 1 field, and say it's going to be, for this row, row 9, but for the first column, it'll be C. So C9, colon, through, and then the last column is F, same row, 9. And then notice over to the right-hand side, it defines all the cells that are within that range, or that it can squeeze in here. And so the first cell is 19 to 10, 19 to 10, and then 15, 15, and so on. So at least we can verify what we have typed in here in case if what we're typing in the function here we don't see in our main view and it's on row HH. But we're familiar with what we want to include in here. So when we type in HH9 through HZ9 and the numbers don't look familiar, and you're like, wow, those are huge numbers, that's not what I'm looking for, then that's an indicator that you probably have the wrong range selected. So that can be helpful. And then down below it gives us the total of it already, the formula result, and then the formula result here as well. And you can include additional ranges, but before we do that, you can either type it in or, let me delete it, you can click on this collapsible dialog box button, because when you click on it, it actually collapses the box. And then you can go ahead and click and drag the title bar down to find your range, click and drag. And then to open it back up, once you selected your range, you can either click on it to pop it open, or let me click on it again to collapse it, hit the Enter key on the keyboard to pop it back open. And then if you have another range that includes cells for the same person for additional months, then go ahead and click on that, collapse it, select the range. I know it's not the correct range, but when I hit Enter, you can see how it can get progressive here, one range after another. So let me go ahead and hit the backspace key to get rid of that range, and then click Okie dokie, and there you go. Now, in addition to that, not only on the formula bar, but if you look on the formulas tab, let's go down to the next cell, you also have the insert function. Click on it, opens up the same window, close out, or you can come up here and you've got these different categories. There's the logical with all the functions in there. If you want to go ahead and, well, it's not in there, click off and look for it. More functions, statistical, engineering. Oh, it's just going crazy. Let's go ahead and click off. You do have the auto sum. So when you click on the drop down arrow, the sum, when you hover over it, is the sum function. And you can see in the pop-up, it's got equals sum. And what's cool is that when you click on it, it's automatically going to choose a range for you. But you're like, no, not that range. All you have to do, if you want a different range, is just go ahead and click and drag the correct range and then just hit Enter, and that goes pretty fast. And then, if you notice up here on the Formulas tab, you also have the Insert Function button that you can click on, and it brings up the same window. Let's go ahead and close out. Let's go down to the next cell, and you've got the function library, so if you want to look for a function, click on one of the corresponding drop-down arrows for those that are logical, look up references, also more functions. Ooh, it's just getting crazy. Let's go ahead and click off. You also have the auto sum, which is a quick summing up of a range. It gets a lot faster than you typing it in, and you can see in the pop-up, it is the sum function. It's just called auto sum because it'll automatically do it for you. How does that work? Well, you can click on it and it automatically selects a range. Now, it's selecting the cells that are next to it because they have something in it. Assuming that that's what you want, it's trying to be helpful, but it's not. But I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and click and drag to select the correct range so we can reshift its focus or selection for this employee ID, and then just go ahead and hit Enter, and there we go. And you'll see that not only can you click on it, but when you click on the drop down arrow, you also get the auto average, auto count numbers, max, min. So if I come up here, and let's do it for the averages. So we can get the average cell for this employee for the first 4 months. Come up here, click on the drop down arrow. Let's do auto average. Again, it just goes out and finds the first cell that contains numbers and it wants to select it. And if there's no adjacent cells next to it, it won't go beyond it. So that's not the range. Go ahead and click and drag and select the correct range, hit Enter. And there's the average cell for this employee for the 4 months. And he averaged about 17,000. And then once you have that, since we want to get it for the rest of the employee IDs, you can go ahead and copy and paste it, or the quickest way to copy and paste, since the cells are adjacent, just go ahead and select the first one that contained the average function. Hover over the lower right-hand corner, that little square, until you can see the black cross, the autofill handle, and then just click and drag down, click off, and did it do it correctly? Go ahead and select the next one down below and see if the average is still in the same row, 7, as the original? No, you can see up here it's in the next row 8. So as you copy and paste it down, it also wants to update the formula and go down with you. So that makes the autofill handle or copying and pasting relative and not absolute. If you want to find the lowest or highest value within a given range, like for the month of January, I want to find out which employee ID had the lowest sales. You can see down below I've got my lowest and highest, or our minimum and maximum functions. So instead of looking at it and eyeballing it, going, okay, let's see, 10,000 looks like it's the lowest. I mean, that's easy when you have just a small range to work with, but you can imagine if it was huge, why go through all that work and eyeballing it? Go ahead and use the, well, in this case, the minimum function to find the lowest value within the range. And there's a couple ways you can insert the function, as we talked about in the previous training video. You can hit the equals key on the keyboard and then just type in MINKEYMOUSE, no, just MIN for minimum function. And you can see down below it's highlighted, and it says in the pop-up it returns the smallest number in a set of values, and it will ignore logical values in text. So if I go ahead and I select January as part of the range, it's going to ignore that. So now that I have it highlighted, hit the tab key on the keyboard to pop it open. There's the syntax, and it says, okay, what's the first range, or number 1? So the first range, I can just go ahead and click and drag to select it and say that's it. If I had an additional range, like I also want to include the minimum in February to find out between the 2 months which one has the lowest value, then hit comma, and then go ahead and click and drag to select it. Now you don't have to select it. You can, of course, go ahead and type it in. If what you want to enter is not in your viewable area, like maybe it's over in column HH, in which case you can, of course, go ahead and type in HH7 through, and then same column HH, row 10. In any case, let's go ahead and get rid of that, and let's just keep it simple and do the selected range for January up above and hit enter. And there you go, there's the lowest value for that given range. The other way that you can do it, and let's do it for the maximum now to find the highest value within that range, which is going to be 35,000, is instead of typing in the equals key, you can come up here on the formula bar and click on FX, opens up the insert function window, or you can close out and come up here on the formulas tab, click on the same button that we just clicked on, that was down below in the formula bar, or you can go ahead and click on one of the drop down arrows to find the minimum maximum functions. But let's just go ahead and do it right here, since it's so obvious that no matter what tab we're on, that we don't have to click on the formulas tab to access it. So click on it. And the reason why you may want to do it this way is because if you don't know anything about the function or you want to learn more about it, it's got it right here. That is, once you find it, and so there's the minimum because it was the most recent. Now we want to find the maximum. Well, it's right there. Another recent one that we've used, or just go ahead and delete that and type in max, click go. It's right there. Maximum returns the largest value in a set of values. It ignores logical values in text. Great, go ahead and click okie dokie. Opens up the function arguments window, and it says, well, right now it's looking at cell C15. Why? Because it's looking at cells that are adjacent to it that contain numbers to try to help you out, thinking, okay, that's probably the start of where you want to look. No, it's up here. So you can either go ahead and come in the number 1, delete it, and then type in your range, and it's going to be C7 through, which is colon, and then C10, and then you can see over to the right, it gives you the data within that range. There's C7, there's C8, C9, C10, and that matches up. Great. Or you can just go ahead and delete it and click on the collapsible dialog box button so it collapses the window. Go ahead and click and drag, then hit the enter key on the keyboard to pop it back open, and you can do a second range. Like, well, without even clicking on the collapsible dialog box button, if you click and drag another range, it automatically collapses, and then when you're done selecting it, it pops it back open. Now you may think, hey, I want to do it that way. That's great if you can see the data, but if you can't, then you may want to collapse it so you can see what's behind it, because you only got so much space to move this thing around when it's expanded. So click on that button to expand it, or hit the enter key on the keyboard. It'll expand it without accepting it. So once it's open, then you can go ahead and accept it by hitting the enter key on the keyboard, which, by the way, you see how OK is highlighted in blue there? That means that that button's active. So when you hit enter on the keyboard, it's going to activate the highlighted button, meaning the same thing as if you just clicked on OK. So if I hit enter, which I won't do that because I don't want that one, and I hit enter now, it accepts it, and let's see, by double clicking on it, it's got the range up above, highlighted in blue, and the highest in there is 35,000. And then, instead of repeating the same thing and inserting the function over and over again for February, March, and April, you can either copy and paste it or use the autofill handle. So if I go ahead and I select this and I do Control-C to copy, Then I click in here and do Control V as in Victor to paste, Control V as in Victor to paste, Control V to paste. That works. Or you can go ahead and hover over the cell. And if the cells are adjacent, you can use the autofill handle by hovering over the lower right-hand corner until you can see the black cross, and then you can click and drag, and voila. So let's see if it checks out. Looking up here in the formula bar, it's the max formula, not for column C because I updated with the autofill handle to column D. And the highest value within there is 15,000. Now, one last thing that I forgot to mention in the previous training video, when you use the autofill feature, for example, when it's being used in columns, there's actually a quicker way when you're using the autofill handle. So for example, if I go ahead and delete the averages here, and let's say I just entered the average for the first employee ID here, and I want to use the autofill handle as we did in the previous training video to click and drag it down to automatically copy and paste that formula into the adjacent cells. Instead, if you want to autofill the column really fast, go ahead and hover over the lower right hand corner until you see the black cross, and then double click really fast, and voila. You don't even have to click and drag. Double click will do it. Will it do it as far as rows? No. Let me go ahead and delete that, and then select the first cell and double click really fast. It doesn't go over, it'll only go down. So I have to click and drag for rows going column to column as opposed to a column going from row to row. Double click and it automatically fills it in that column. What you're looking at here is my Dreamforce payroll database, where we got a list of all our employees and, well, the total number of hours they worked that week, their hourly rate, and then the multiplication between the two gives us their weekly gross pay for that week. And the two functions that I want to focus on are the count and count A. First of all, the count, you can see the definition to the right of it. It'll count up all the cells with the number. Well, how is that going to work? Well, for example, if I want to find out how many employees worked this week or logged in hours or a number, let's count up how many actually worked by counting up the number of cells that they have numbers in or that they logged their hours in. Well, you can eyeball it pretty quickly just by counting up the cells, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but you can imagine if you had a huge database, that's going to take a while. Better yet, let's go ahead and use the count function. So hit the equals key on the keyboard and type in the first couple of letters of count until you can see it highlighted. And you can see over the left-hand side the explanation for the count. It counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So with the highlighted, hit the tab key to pop open the syntax so you can see that the first value or range is what we're going to be selecting. Just go ahead and click and drag to select it. And then if you want to select another range in addition to that, then hit the comma on the keyboard and it pops open to the second value or second range and so on. So let's go ahead and hit the backspace key because I don't want to focus on 2, 3, or 4 more ranges, just this one. Hit the enter key on the keyboard and there you go. Counts up 7. Oh, that's slick. Now don't confuse that with the count down below on the status bar. So for example, when you select a range of cells, it says count down below, right? It's not the same as the one up here that the count function we use to count up the number of cells. This one, when you hover over it, says it's the number of cells selected that contain data. Not numbers, data. So if I come over here and select that range doesn't have any numbers in it, just data, so it's counting them up. In that selected range, we have a total of 8 that contain data. Well, let me select one more before it. Still 8 because the first one doesn't contain data out of the 9 that I have selected. So keep that in mind. And in fact, if you want to do a shortcut and not have to type in the function to count up all cells with a number, then just come down here and right-click on the status bar because it is customizable, as we talked about in an earlier training video. There's the count. Here's the numerical count. Just go ahead and check it and then click off and select a range again. And then down below you got the count and numerical count. Now this counts up all the cells that contain data, which makes sense because it counts up whether or not it has numbers, text, or a combination or both. But this one will actually count up only those cells that contains numbers. So that one is true to form with using the count function, where the other one is just data, not numbers. So let's go ahead and do count A. And it counts up cells that are not empty. Well, how's that going to work? Like for example, if you want to find out how many employees have benefits out of our 10, you can count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or use the count A function. Again, cells that have something in them or that are not empty. So equals count, and it's right there, so I can just hit the down arrow key, and you can see it says counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty, that have something in them. Hit the tab key to pop open the count function. You have the first value, could be a value or range of cells here. So you can go ahead and click and drag to select it. And then if we have other ranges, we don't. Let's hit enter on the keyboard, and there you go. counts the cells that are not empty, that have something in them. And so we can say that out of 10 employees, 8 have benefits. We want to give all our employees benefits, and we want to find out just off the top of our head if we have to hold another presentation to kind of nudge those other 2 employees to sign on for benefits. They pay an extra $50 a month to get all the benefits. That way we don't have to go through and start counting one at a time to see how many there are, but use the COUNTA function, those cells that have something in them or that are not empty. What you're looking at here are 2 mini databases of camping gear sold in both the US and the UK. We're going to be using these to learn how to move, copy, cut, and paste our data. Now for those of you who already know the basics, you may want to hang with me because, like with all my training videos, what you see in the title, the name of it, I try to add more than just what's there. I can't say move, copy, cut, and paste and more advanced. I try to keep it simple for those who want to learn the basics. So see if I can teach you something new, but first we got to start with the basics to get everybody up to speed who doesn't know the basics. To get started, I want to go ahead and add up the total for this employee ID for the months of January through April. To do that, I'm going to come up here and click on the Formula tab, go to the Function Library. Let's click on AutoSum. And it wants to add up including the employee ID, and I don't want that, so I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag the range that I want it to add up, which is January through April, and hit Enter. Now once I have the formula there, I'd like to add the formula also to the adjacent cells here and also into the camping gear in the UK down below. Now you can do it a couple of ways that we already learned in an earlier training video, and that was to go ahead and select the cell and then hover over the bottom right hand corner until you can see the black autofill handle, the black cross. You can click and drag that down and it'll automatically fill in the formula, copy it down into adjacent cells, and it will be a relative reference, meaning that it doesn't copy the exact same reference this cell has, which is row 6, but it updates it to row 7. Otherwise we'd have the exact same number here. So it updates it. Let me go ahead and hit undo. Or you can copy and paste, which to copy you can right click on the cell, go down to copy, or come up here on the Home tab to the clipboard group and click on the copy button, or as you can see in the pop-up, the shortcut key is Control-C to copy. When I do that, it puts it in copy mode. You get the marching ants that go around it saying, okay, this cell is in copy mode. What cell do you want to paste it to? Well, it's going to be the next one down below. And then once I have it selected, I can right click on that cell to get my different paste options. And since we haven't learned all the others, we'll just keep it simple and go with the first one. And you can see when I hover over it, it shows me the result of it, a preview of it in cell H7 without me having to click on it, because when I hover out of it, it's no longer there. You can do it that way. You can come up here on the Home tab to the clipboard group and click on the paste button. Well, let me click off here and then come up here to show you that when you hover over it, you can also use the shortcut keys Control-V as in Victor. So if I do shortcut keys Control-V to paste it, cool. Now it's still in copy mode, so I can go down to the next cell and do Control-V and go to the next cell, Control-V, but I got a quicker way than that. Let me hit undo, undo. And if you want to get out of the marching ant mode because you no longer want to copy that, you can hit the escape key on the keyboard, but we want to stay in copy mode, but we want to go ahead and copy this cell, Control-C, but in a different way. Instead of selecting each cell to paste it in, and you can say, look, just click and drag and end the pane here, the autofill handle to fill it up. Well, I want to show you when you paste it, not only can you paste it in a single click in this range without having to select each cell, but also in a non-adjacent range here. So having said that, let's go ahead and click and drag and select the range. And then as we learned in an earlier training video, when you want to select nonlinear cells, then go ahead and hold down the Control key and click and drag the next range. So we have one cell that's in copy mode with a total of 7 other cells that we have selected that we want to paste that cell into, or the contents of that cell, the formula. With it selected, you can go ahead and right click on the selection, go down to paste, and notice I haven't clicked on it. It gives me a preview of it. Looks good. Go ahead and click paste. There we go. Cool. Wasn't that a spiffy? Let's go ahead and double check to make sure it's correct. So if I come down here to make sure it's a relative reference, so it updates it. So since it's no longer in row 6 or in Kansas anymore, it's now in row 17, that when I double click on it, it's selecting row 17 and not up here row 6. So that's what we call relative reference when you copy and paste a formula. It's got to update, because if it's not in the same row and it's in a new row, then you want to, well, in this case, make sure that you're adding up the range for that employee and not the one up here, and putting it down here assuming that's going to be for that employee. And we'll talk about absolute and relative references in a later training video, but for right now, it's good that it's relative so we can have the same formula in other cells that'll update and match that row that it's in. So row 17, great for that employee ID. Let me hit the escape key to get back out. Next, let's learn how to move a cell or arrange the cells around. So if I go ahead and select the totals cell, you can see it's highlighted, the border of it, on all four sides in green. So if I hover over the border of the selected cell, I get a four-way arrow, which means that when I click and hold the border, I can move it four directions, up, down, left, or right. There we go. Let me go ahead and hit undo. You can also do it to arrange the cells by, well, make sure that when you select the range that you get the white cross, that you don't hover over the border of the cell to select the range down below, because otherwise you're moving it over something else, and that's not good unless you intend to do it. Which, by the way, congratulations, we know how to do it. Click cancel. We don't want to replace this cell with that. So instead, get the white cross, then click and drag to select the range, and then you can hover over any one of the four borders of the selected range to then click and drag the border and move it around. Yippee skippy. There we go. I'm going to throw you for a loop now. How about if I go ahead and I'm looking at the totals, but I also want the totals as a label down below, the employees, so you can get the totals for all the employees for the month of January, February, March, and April. You could go ahead and type in the totals here if you'd like, or you can go ahead and select the totals up here, hover over the border, and click and drag it and put it down below. Now you'd say, wait a second, if I do that, then it's moving the totals. Well, yes, that is until I hold down the control key. Now look at my pointer. When I hold down the control key, it adds the plus sign to the right of it. That means it's in copy mode. I don't know if you can see it, but when I let go of the left mouse button, then the control key, it copies it. Isn't that fun? So you can do it here as well. Hold down the control key, click and drag the border of totals, put it right there. Great. You can also do entire columns or rows. For example, if you want to select a row, just click on the row header, and this row is 13. You can see that when I hover over it, I get a black arrow pointing to the right. When you see it, click on it. It selects the entire row. Then if you click on it and drag it either up or down, it selects the adjacent rows. So if I want to go ahead and click on column H, click on the column header, you can click and drag left or right, of course. And then to actually move it, you can right click on the column header, and then you get your options of cutting, or you can use the pair of scissors on the home tab in the clipboard group, or use the shortcut keys Control X, which, wait a second, how do you know the shortcut keys for cutting? You can come up here and look at the pair of scissors, and you can see in the pop-up Control X. So if you want to know the shortcut keys for any command, hover over it and see if it has one available. And then if I go ahead and, with it selected, do Control X, now wait a second, it gives me the marching ants. Well, doesn't copying also give me the marching ants? That's true. The only way that you can find out if you're in cut or copy mode is to actually maybe hit the escape and do it over again, because there's no different with those marching ants. So if I go ahead and do Control X again, and I'm like, okay, let me go ahead and paste it over here, like on column J, click on column J, and then do Control V as in Victor to paste it. Isn't that great? Now, as a side note, you could also right-click, let me hit undo, and hit the escape key to get out of that mode. That when I click on column H and I right-click and I go down to cut, if you right-click on another column, not only do you get the paste option, which is fabulous, by the way, I just taught you that, you can also insert cut cells. Ooh, how does that work? It means that when I put it on top of a column, it doesn't paste over it, it inserts it. So it pushes column I over and inserts it there, and so everything gets shifted. Well, probably to prove my point, let me hit the escape key to get out of it, is that if I take this row, 9, and it begins with 4, 5, 6, and I insert it on top of 7, it doesn't paste it over it unless I say paste over it, but if I insert it, it'll actually take this row and push it down, and so 2, 3, 4 will now be in row 8, and 3, 4 will now be in 9, and then 4, 5, 6 will now be in row 7. Want to see? Alrighty. Right-click on 9, go down to cut. Right-click on 7, and then instead of pasting it, to overwrite it, let me get out of that. Let's go down to insert cut cells, and everything gets bumped down to make way for, hey, 4, 5, 6. So 2, 3, 4 gets pushed down, and then below that, 3, 4, 5 gets bumped down. Everybody has to roll over and get knocked out of the bed to make way for the insert. And then finally, when it comes to copying cells, if you got a lot of copying to do, like you want to copy this or that range, and then paste over here, and then come back and copy this, then go over there and come back and copy that, that can be annoying. The way around that is you can use what's called the clipboard. So if I come up here and I do January, Control C to copy it, where does it go? It goes to the clipboard. Where's that? Up here on the Home tab in the Clipboard group, and you can click on its expandable dialog box button, and it opens up the clipboard, and there it is. So you didn't know this, but every time you were copying and pasting, or even cutting and pasting, you had to go somewhere to hold it until it was ready to dump it wherever you placed your mouse and clicked in a cell to paste it. So if you have a lot of things to do, instead of going back and forth, just add them to the clipboard, because with this open, it'll start adding up to a total of 24. In fact, you can see down below in the status bar it says 1 of 24 on the clipboard. Where if I didn't see the clipboard, whatever I copied and then paste, it can only do one at a time. But now since I have this open, I can add up to 24. So if I do February, copy, Control C, or if I want to come over here and you can do Control X to cut it, it adds it over here. And if I'm like, oh, I made a mistake, you can click on the drop down arrow and delete it. And then you still got your clipboard open. You don't have to add it to it. And just whatever that you want to, Control C to copy, and maybe an entire range to Control C to copy, that you want to go ahead and paste another part of your worksheet or even on another sheet. Now when I go to another sheet, this clipboard is still open. So I can go ahead and click on it to add it. Or when you hover over it, you can click on the drop down arrow, as we just did, to paste it there as well. Or you can right click, it brings up the shortcut menu to paste or delete it from the clipboard. You also, when I click off in a blank area, the paste all command, and it pastes everything that's on the clipboard. Ooh, that's fun. Or you can go to an entirely different workbook, click on File, go down to New, click on Blank Workbook. The clipboard stays with you. It's part of the Windows feature that allows you to not just stay in one application and not open up another, because if I open up Microsoft Word, right click in the jump list to Word, hey, look at that, the paste option's there as well, meaning that something's on there. Click Paste, and there you go. You can click to expand it to open up the clipboard and even paste what you copied in Excel into Microsoft Word. Woohoo! Let's go ahead and close out of that, not save it. And let's go ahead and click Clear All, close out of it, and then go ahead and close out of that. We're back to our original workbook that we started this training video with. Close out of the clipboard there, go back to, hit the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of it, go back to sheet 1. And then one final thought when it comes to copying and pasting or cutting and pasting is that if I select a range here and I go ahead and let's do the copy, I don't have to select an entire range to match what I'm copying over into, because if I select a cell above and I do Control V as in Victor, it'll automatically say, oh, what you've got over in the selection here is more than what fits into the cell, so I'll automatically dump it into the adjacent cells down below. And if there's something else below that it can't squeeze it into, then it'll override it, in which case you may not want that and you'll have to undo it and try it again. Hit the escape key to get out of the marching ants. As you recall in earlier training videos, when you typed in or inserted a function or formula, as you can see in this example in cell C12, up in the formula bar, it's referencing all C's, or the same column for all the employees who made sales in the month of January. So I can go ahead and copy that and paste it into the new column here for the month of February. And does it keep the same column reference C? No, it updates it relative to the new column, which is D, so I don't get the same value by having these as all C's, but the new column, column D. Again, that's called a relative reference, and by default that's what Excel does. Well, what if you have a formula that when you copy and paste it to other cells, you don't want it to update relative to a new row if you paste it in a new row, or a new column if you paste it into another column? Well, first of all, why would you want to do that? And second of all, how does that work? Well, let me show you in this example. I want to be able to calculate the commissions for each employee, the totals that they made for the sales in the months of January through April, by taking the total and multiplying it by 8%. So to type in a formula that will multiply those two cells together, hit equals, and then select one cell. Doesn't matter which one you want to select first. And then the symbol to multiply is the asterisk. Type that in and then select the other cell, which is the total cell, and then hit enter and you're done. Hopefully that's in thousands of dollars, otherwise $44 per commission. That's not a lot. Next, you'd go ahead, or I would take this and copy it and paste it into the other cells, or better yet, I'd select it, and since the cells are adjacent, I use the black autofill handle by hovering over the lower right hand corner on that little tiny green square until I can see a black cross. Then I click and drag it down to automatically copy and paste that into its adjacent cells. Oh, wait a second, what's going on here? What the fudge? How come it's not giving me what I want? It's giving me 0 and some value issue. And the best way to figure this out, what's going on, is to double click in it to pull up the formula for that cell. And notice that it's going to the next row, which is relative, and that makes sense because we're no longer in row 7, we're in row 8, so H8 makes sense, same column. But what about the commission? The commission is always going to be in row 3, column H, but by default, Excel wants to update it relative to us going down one cell. So when we go down one cell, it also shifts it from H3, or row 3 to 4. And then as we go down to the next one, it goes to 5. That's why we get the value issue, because it's like, look, when I take a number, let me hit the escape key and double click on that. When I take a number and multiply it by something that has text in it, let me hit the escape key. What's the value of that? It can't figure it out. It's a value issue. Where these other two cells right here, that when you double click on it, it's doing the empty cell above and below the total cell. And so when you take a number and multiply it by 0, you get 0. So what we need to do is to tell this cell, H3, to be absolute, to be constant, to don't update as we copy and paste this formula one row after another, but to always stay in that same row. How do you do that? Let me hit the escape key, and let's go back and start with our original formula here in cell J7, double click. And to make H3 an absolute reference to always stay there when we update it and go down row by row, and also if you went over column by column, then come up here. You can do it in the formula bar or actually do it in the cell here in edit mode, but I'll come up here in the formula bar. And we need to add some symbols before the cell H3 that tells it to always stay put. And the key that I use to add those symbols is F4. When you hit F4, it adds $signs before the column H and the row 3. The $signs represent absolute or constants, meaning that don't move, you stay. Like your dog, Fido. Stay, Fido, stay. Which, by the way, Fido begins with the letter F, and there's 4 letters in Fido. F4. Hey, that's how I remember things. In any case, when I go ahead and I hit enter, and then I copy and paste it into other cells, it won't shift it down relative to the next row when I go down 1 row, and then down 2 rows to row 5 to the total cell, and so on. But before I go ahead and copy and paste it down, let me double click and go over one more thing. And we can do it right here. You can see it better in color. You've got the $sign before H and before 3. Now, the $sign before H says never move it or never get out of column H. Well, am I really moving out of column H when I go down row by row? No. So I can actually get rid of the $sign, the absolute reference in front of H, and hit enter, and then go ahead and copy and paste it by selecting it, clicking, and dragging it down. And that works, right? Because if I was going and copying and pasting the formula from one column to the next, then without an absolute reference, double click in front of the H, it's going to go from column H over to column I. Same row, but there's nothing in column I, right, for row 3. So I didn't really need to add the extra $sign in front of H, because as I'm going down row by row, it's going to be in the same column. But if I'm going over column by column, it's going to be in the same row, but I need to go ahead and make sure it keeps it in that column. So again, you can either type in the $signs. You don't have to hit the F4 key. There's no magic in that, except that it adds the $signs for you. So I can just go ahead and type it in there, hit enter. And if I come up here, click and drag down by using the autofill handle, copies in the same thing. It knows that it's going to be staying in the same column because that's the relative reference, but moving it row by row, but it becomes constant or absolute when I tell it with the $sign to not move out of that row. And then, of course, because all these cells are linked through formulas or functions, they perform a symbiotic relationship. In other words, you've got the commission that are dependent upon these other cells. So if I come up here and I change it from 8% to 10%, hit enter, it updates their commission. And vice versa, if I come over here, further cells for this employee, and I update that, that total is based upon it. So if I type in 500, hit enter, updates the total, but because that formula is also based upon that, multiplying it by the commission, it updates that as well. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.